Jake. I'm going to take you out to an existing customer's house. A little background on this one. Last time I was there 13 months ago, unit didn't have enough airflow going to it. It's a 4-ton Trane heat pump with one of them TIM 6 air handlers with a variable speed blower. The customer called me because they were getting mold, what they thought was mold and mildew all over their vents. I call it growth, but yeah, I opened up that indoor unit and it was just covered. It had that plastic blower housing. Those things are notorious for collecting that kind of stuff, that growth. It was completely caked. The door was caked. All the wires inside the air handler were caked. The coil even had it on there. I suggested they get a mold remediation to come out. I gave them that number to a guy that I know that does work for the hospitals in Eastman and stuff. They ended up using somebody else. Not really sure why, what happened there, but supposedly they had a mold remediation done. I looked at the unit and the airflow wasn't set correctly on the variable speed blower. It was set in medium speed, which was only giving them about 1350 CFM. And then the auxiliary heat setting was low as well. So I upped the blower speed to high for the heat cool tap, which is supposed to bring that airflow up to 1565 CFM, and then 1596 CFM on the auxiliary heat when I bumped that speed up as well. So I made 2 blower adjustments to push more air through the system. I tested the charge on the system, and the charge was low as well. I had 1 degree of subcooling. Unit called for 8, and I had to add 1.5 pounds of R410A to the system. The customer declined the leak search, kind of like, I guess, DIY guys, and told me just to leave it alone. I did notate in my notes, though, that the 20 by 30 on the main level had a 16-inch flex going up to the return plenum. There's a 14 by 20 in the hallway area that only had a 10-inch flex, so that's good total now for about 1,300 CFM, 1,000 on the 16, and about 300 on the 10. And then the major problem that I found was in the bonus room. It goes up a set of stairs, which is closed off by a door, and I had 4 drops, 6-inch supply drops entering this bonus room above the garage, but it only had a 14 by 14 return grill with only a number 8-inch flex coming off of it going back to the return. So they're dumping 4 6-inch supplies into that room, but they're not recovering what they're dumping in. And with that door down at the bottom of the stairs, it's not letting that air get back to the system, so they're at a deficit. So based on the calculation, they got about 1,460 CFM available to go back to the system, but they're really needing 1,600 CFM. They had it remediated, they said, and they've been checking monthly on the system, opening up the air handler, and they said in August, when it got really hot, they opened up the indoor unit and the mold mildew growth was back on the blower and on the coil and the wires. They said they cleaned the growth off the wires, and they actually pulled the blower motor themselves out of the unit, and they said they cleaned it really good and put it back in, and they want me to come back now and see if I can check the charge and look at possibly enlarging that return in the bonus room. It's an 8-inch return coming back. It really needs to be about a 12-inch to be able to recover 4 supply drops, 6-inch supply drops. So I'm going to look at adding a 12-inch return coming back to the return plenum, as well as I'd like to enlarge that return grill to at least a 14 by 20 without having to cut studs and stuff like that. See if I can raise it up and get a 14 wide by 20 tall, and maybe that would suffice. At that point, that gives us the capability of recovering 480 to 500 CFM back to the return, and that would then give us more than adequate return air flow back to the system. So I also told him I want to do a static pressure test on the system, hook up to supply and return, see where the static is. Most of these houses over here, these are all newer constructions from like 2017, 18. They're built like trash. They're really nice looking houses, but the ductwork in them, every one that I've gone to, the ductwork is inadequate, especially on the returns. So they're not the first person I've run into over here in this area, which is pretty sad because they spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on this house, and you know, look what they're having to deal with after just what, 5 or 6 years, 7 years of being in the place. Unit's not under warranty either. They weren't the first homeowner, so really stinks for them. them set up. I'm gonna take you over there. Hopefully I can record. Last time I was there, both the husband and the wife were on me the whole time. I don't mind people standing over me. I just feel awkward about recording when they're right there. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Let's get over there and see what we can get into. Alright, so here's the return I was talking about. Customer's been here the whole time, but I had to go check his computer. Works from home. That's a 8-inch that goes in over there on a 14 by 14. It's going to be really tight to get in there. When it comes up, you can see they just used band iron to strap it. Pinched it down in several spots, and then it comes up and over and then gets pinched right there. Drops in the top, and then that tin is really bent over right there. And the tin runs all the way over. Right there. All the way over on the other side of the house and goes down the wall, in the wall. Didn't run metal up through the wall, they ran flex all the way down. And then the 16 does the same thing. It's right here and goes down right there, and instead of coming up out of the wall with metal and attaching the flex to it, they ran the flex down into the return grill box, the plenum off the box, off the return air grill. It really should be metal that comes up through the wall. Really shouldn't run flex down through the cavity like that. So you can't really do anything with that. That 10 is a really long run. I'd like to see 14 on that or something. It's a long run. It's over 40 feet, I bet. Easy. That's what we got. So I think what the plan is, I'm going to come off of that one over there with a piece of 12 and come around like this and then cut the corner right here and run it right into the side. I came up with the idea of taking these off and get that out of the way, so that, and then put it over here or something. That way this isn't kinked quite so bad. And then we build a little takeoff off of this thing and drop down, and then bring my 12 around and swoop in and come in right here on a face that I built. And then this 10, instead of coming up and over, bring it right here. But the cost to do that would be a lot higher. The customer didn't want to do that. Felt like it would be too expensive. So yeah, I just did the static pressure test on this. And let me grab my phone here. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I just found I have something on my left microphone here that looks like it's got some kind of cover on it. Alright, so I'm running 0.5 inches, 0.56 inches of total static on this system. 0.45 inches is on the return. And 0.13 inches is on the supply. So I actually have way more static on the return. 0.45 inches. And then 0.13 on the supply side. I got my probes hooked up outside, and I'm trying to see if the charge is still good. It might have just been put in the winter time and they never came back and trim charged it. Very well could have done that. It was installed April 28 of 2017 according to this. And when I got here, like where the customer had pulled the blower wheel was actually rubbing the plastic blower housing. And I was like, spun it to look at it. He was telling me that the heater coils had some more mold mildew stuff on it, but everything in the actual wheel looked okay. But when I spun the wheel, it was like spun and then said and I spun it said so when he had attached the wheel back to the shaft of the blower, it actually was up too high and was rubbing the casing of the blower, and has been like that since August. So for almost 2 months. So I had to pull the blower out and loosen the set screw, drop the wheel down so it's no longer rubbing the plastic housing on this thing, and then tighten the set screw, and then looked at the heater strips, and the heat strips were did have some growth on it, especially on the insulators. But then down in this metal ductwork, there's a T down here, and you could see a bunch of growth in the bottom of that. I told him it looks like you might need another company out here, the one I recommended maybe, to come out and really give this thing a thorough cleaning. It's got a 15 kW heat kit on it, You would think it's a 20 because it's got two 60s, but it's not. So I told him we need to check these breakers, because it would call for a 60 on one side, but then a 25 on the other, and there's no disconnects up here. So he'd need a 60, double pole 60 and a double pole 25 for the indoor unit. If he has a double pole 60 and a double pole 30, that breaker needs to be swapped out for a 25, or I need to install a fused 25 amp disconnect for this one right here. This one has the number 10 wire on it, and this one has the number 6 on it. Alright, well, that's what I got. I'm gonna go out here and see what the charge is doing. When I first looked at it after hooking up to it, it had been running several minutes. It actually looked okay. I had like 6.5 degrees of subcooling, but it hadn't been running long enough yet, and the fan hadn't ramped up yet. This is on an enhanced setting. Can't remember if it's like 5 to 8 minutes it runs at a lower capacity, and then speeds up. I think it's 5 minutes, something like that. But yeah, I'll go out. It's an XL 16i train, single stage. Alright, well, that's this job. I'm gonna give them a quote for running the new 12 from over there up and around and in, and I have to cap that, of course, insulate it and stuff like that. But I didn't get approval to build that blow off, and he hasn't approved me yet on the 14 by 20 grill. I might go ahead and leave that as a 14 by 14. I don't know. But that's what we got so far. It's a nice unit, man. These units are nice. I don't like the plastic blower wheels in them, though. The housing, I mean. I think that's a problem waiting to happen. Let's get over here to this unit. Nice quiet unit. Let's see what she's doing here. Nice quiet unit, man. I think this is the XL 16i. I might have already said that. Getting a 17 degree temperature split between return and supply. Now that I have those fan blower speeds from last time adjusted, I was getting 21 plus 22 in cooling last time, and when we upped those blower speeds, it dropped that delta T down. It is kind of chilly in there. It was 71, 72 in there when I started it, 72. Now it's down to a 68.5 degree return. So we're hovering right at 17 degrees, and you can see we're averaging right now 6 degrees of subcooling and 11.7 degrees of superheat. That's been fluctuating. It's gone all the way down to 5.9. And this has come up to over 12, so it's just fluctuating. I like the vapor saturation around 39, 40 degrees. It's kind of right in that sweet spot of 38 to 42. So I'm happy with all that. You can see we're real kind of close to low here, 51.4. When I start seeing that suction line temperature dropping below 50, typically indicates an airflow issue. I almost wonder if it's necessarily maybe not a crazy airflow issue. It's just that, you know, they didn't get everything out of the ductwork. I did find that one big splotch in there. There was a big splotch on the side of the evaporator indoor pan that was never touched. It was fully coated still. So I mean, it's not below 50, and there's not a lot of load on this. But when I start seeing that drop down in the mid 40s, low 40s, you know, 46, 47, you know, you can almost guarantee you got an airflow issue. But he does want to go ahead and upgrade that 12, the return flex for the bonus room, because we have 4 supplies up there, 6-inch supplies, and we only have an 8-inch return servicing that. I still don't know if he's going to authorize the 14 by 20 return, or if he's going to want to keep it at a 14 by 14. But it's calling for 8 degrees as our target subcooling, and you can see we're hovering right around 6. And I charged this thing up 13 months ago. So it's either got a small leak, or it was maybe never trim charged at install. You know, they might have just cut it loose. The install date was April 28th. So it might have been cool out that day, or someone just cut it loose after pulling a vacuum and never trimmed it in using subcooling or something. We're hovering right around 16.9, 17 degree temperature split. So I just wonder if maybe he didn't get as good of a cleaning as he paid for with the company he used. He didn't use the guy that I recommended. But the charge is fine. It's 8 degrees of subcooling plus or minus 3. So it has dropped. Last time I was here, when I left it, it was 7.6. But you know, it could just be it also. I mean, you can see it looks pretty clean. I was gonna say maybe I just need to clean this thing. It looks pretty clean, but these trains can be deceiving. They don't look that dirty. That's one thing I really do like about the spine fin design, is they take a long time to plug up. You know, it's not like especially a micro channel plugs up really easy. Those spine fins can go quite a while before they'll plug up on you. So we're hovering right around, kind of staying real steady. 39.6 degree vapor saturation, 11.8 to 12 degrees of superheat. We're sitting right there at 6 degrees of subcooling. We're back at 17. We're really not moving around much. Alright, well, I was driving home, got a phone call, realized I didn't shoot an outro, so I just got done with the phone call. Wanted to discuss that system. A few things here. The static pressure test. It's not overly crazy on that static pressure test. I was getting 0.56 inches to 0.58 inches total external static. I was getting about 0.45 on the high end on the return side, 0.13 on the high end on the supply side. So technically it looks like they designed the system that way. They put more of the static on the return side. If you look at that system and also with the pressures I was running, you know, I was running 6 degrees of subcooling. I had a 51.5 degree suction line temperature, 11.6 degrees of superheat. The unit called for 8 degrees of subcooling plus or minus 3 degrees. And I was running a 39.9 degree vapor saturation, and I had a 17 degree temperature split. So technically that unit is moving that air that it's supposed to, since I adjusted the blower speed 13 months ago and added 1.5 pounds of refrigerant. I wouldn't say that right now that unit's low on charge, because it's still falling within the factory parameters of plus or minus 3 degrees. Now, next year if I were to check it and it's dropped even more, then I would say, yeah, you got a leak and let's go ahead and leak search this system. But right now I'm not gonna tell the guy, yeah, we need to leak search this system, because it's not the right call. It's still operating within spec, even though it has dropped. When I charged it up before, it was 7.6 degrees of subcooling, and I had about a 17.6, 17.7 degree temperature split. Right now it's down to 17, and I have a little bit lower subcooling, but also I hadn't cleaned that outdoor coil. You know, those spine fin coils are a little deceiving. Sometimes they don't look dirty, and they're a little more dirty than what they, you know, may appear. They are way better than a micro channel coil, which plugs up just looking at it wrong, and better than a normal coil that you know, on a regular old system. So you know, it's a few things to look at there. If you look at the return sizing and stuff, you have a 16. If they didn't account for static pressure, that's 1200 CFM. If you account for static, it's more like 1000 CFM. If you look at the other return, the 14 by 20, the 16's on a 20 by 30. If you look at the 14 by 20 in the hallway, it's on a 10-inch return flex duct. So if you don't account for static, that's 400 CFM. If you account for static, it's more like 300 CFM. And then if you look at the bonus room, it's on a 14 by 14 return grill, and it's only got an 8 on it. If you don't account for static, that's 200 CFM. If you account for static, it's more like 160 CFM. So if you're looking at that, if you look at the static without, if you look at the airflow CFM ratings of those 3 return ducts, that's 1600 CFM, and it's a 4-ton unit rated at 1600 CFM. Now if you account for static, it's more like 1460 on that. But where I've adjusted the blower speed up to high, it's rated at 1565 for the heat and cool call, and 1596 for the auxiliary heat. So I think that now that system is moving the proper amount of air, even though it might be just a hair short on the return, not by much. I think more so what's caused this guy's issue initially was the blower speeds were not adjusted. They were not set properly at install, and it caused issues inside of his ductwork. Also, maybe when they installed it, it was installed April 28 of 2017. Maybe whoever installed it didn't trim charge it. They just looked at the pressures, low side, high side, and said, we're good. And they, even though when I went out there, we had 1 degree of subcooling. And so I had to add 1.5 pounds of refrigerant to it, but it's still within that range. So maybe that's what happened. You know, when they installed it, they didn't do a good commissioning process on it, and you know, it caused issues inside of it. And then when he had this other company come out and remediate the mold and clean the ductwork, maybe they didn't clean it all that good. I didn't see any cuts in the supply ductwork going through that attic where they had sliced open the insulation and cut access ports into it. I told him, my guy, he's mold certified, he's a very thorough, does a very thorough job, he's very meticulous. He'll go through that whole system on the supply and cut access ports through that whole thing. And he will go through, run brushes and stuff through it, vacuuming and stuff. And then he also seals it. So once he's cleaned it, he seals the whole duct line, even the flex lines, with this sealant. And it's supposed to smother the mold and prevent, and it puts a layer on it and prevents it from growing back. You know, so there's a difference in remediation process. In August, when he went up there and pulled that cover off, and he saw a little bit on the actual blower housing, you know, he pulled that blower out, he didn't put the blower wheel back in properly, and it was rubbing the housing. I had to adjust that for him, pull the blower and move that blower wheel down so it wasn't rubbing on the housing anymore. I looked at the heat kit, and the heat kit had tiny little specks on the insulators in the resistance coil. And then when I shine my light though down through that heat kit into the supply ductwork, there was a big section that was all green, and looks like it was never touched, you know. So I'm thinking whoever did it maybe didn't do a real thorough job and took his money and took him for a ride, you know. I think that's more so what has happened here. And I think that the mold came back because they didn't remediate it. They didn't get it all. I think that even though the ductwork's a little on the smaller side on the return, it's even that since it is a variable speed blower, it is able to ramp up and push through that static and deliver the airflow that he needs. So I told him there's a few different options he could go. He could go hardcore on it. We could take the heat kit out, replace the heat kit. We could pull the blower. I did pull it, but make sure it doesn't have anything on it. We could clean the coil, or we could pull and clean the coil. Have a guy come in and remediate the ductwork, or you could have a guy come in, not me, because I don't install ductwork new, especially with new systems and stuff like that. I would refer that out to somebody. You could replace all the ductwork in the house. So you could go hardcore. You could replace all the ductwork in the house. You could pull everything out of the indoor air handler, scrub it from top to bottom. You could replace the indoor air handler. I mean, there's different ways to look at it. I told him that you could we could pull just the heat kit out and have my guy come in and do all the cleaning on the ductwork, the remediation and sealing process, and then we could just slide a new heat kit in and call it good. Or we could look at replacing that return line in the bonus room. If you look at that bonus room, it has 4 6-inch supply drops in there. So if you look at static pressure, maybe 320 CFM, but if you're not looking at static pressure, let's just say 400 CFM delivery, but you have an 8-inch flex on it, you're only getting back 200. If you look at static, you're only getting back 160, so you're dropping 400, but you're only pulling back half of it. So that's a problem, you know. So I told him something else we could do is I'd suggest, if you want to go, I'd have this stuff remediated again. I'd call my buddy, have him come in and tell him, look, I need this done meticulously, I need a thorough job, and he'll get it done. He does stuff for the hospitals, he does stuff for Eastman. He knows what he's doing. The guy's certified in all different kinds of mold remediation. He knows what he's doing. So have him come in, and I said, you know what we could do is just off that supply, off the return in the bonus room, instead of having an 8 there, we just come off with the number 12, and that way we're pulling back 480 to 500 CFM availability in that capacity of that 12-inch return if you account for static. If you don't account for static, it's capable of 600 CFM, and that way we're at least pulling back what's getting put out in that bonus room. And I was telling him if he wants, he said that the temperatures always are different, and I said, well, putting a return in there, a larger return's not necessarily going to help that. Really what you need to do is thermal break the floor. That bonus room is over top of the garage. The garage is hot, it's not conditioned. So they'd have to drop the sheetrock in the garage ceiling, pull all the insulation out of there that they put in. It's probably friggin' R19 or R13, something cheap, you know it is, these new construction houses, and that all needs to be spray foamed. That garage ceiling needs to be spray foamed, and then you need to slide the sheetrock back up and do some sheetrock up there, and then you'd have a thermal break between your garage and that bonus room, and that alone would help hugely with comfort inside that bonus room. Also, the main thermostat for this house is down on the first floor, and the bonus room is up on a second floor. It's up these stairs. You're never going to get an accurate depiction of temperature between the main floor and an upstairs if you're conditioning it with the same system, unless it's zoned. It's too small to really zone though. That's such a small zone. So I said, you know, the other thing you could do is put a room sensor up there and get a thermostat that's compatible with room sensors, have a room sensor up there and have it prioritize that room sensor. You basically have to overcool the rest of your house a little bit to satisfy up there. And then in heating mode, you really wouldn't have to worry about it because all the heat's going to go up there anyways. But the main thing that would make a huge difference in that bonus room is to thermal break that floor. Because it's over the garage, insulation does not suffice. You've got to thermal break that with spray foam. So, you know, it's just a few different things that I mentioned to him. I mentioned to him, you know, you could leave this system the way it is right now, not do any changes, because based on the pressures, the temperatures that I'm looking at, the suction line temperature, superheat, subcooling, and the temperature split, you're delivering that airflow. Yes, that blower is probably running at a higher capacity. It's using more energy. It's going to put more wear and tear on it, but it's delivering, I'd say, that rating of 1565 for heat cool, 1596 for the auxiliary heat mode. So even though those returns are a little shy and the static's a little higher, it's not excessively high. We're not looking at 1 inch of static. I said, really what you need is, you need a guy that's meticulous and thorough to come in here and remediate the mold in your ductwork properly. And it would, you know, probably remedy the situation. I don't know what he'll approve. I'm just going to give him lots of different options. I gave him the contact information to my buddy to have him come out and do the remediation if he doesn't want to replace the ductwork. He doesn't want to rip the indoor unit apart and fully clean it and seal it. You know, that's up to him. I just got to leave the ball in his court, give him all the options of what he can do, you know, to remedy the situation. He doesn't want to be breathing mold, mildew, growth, whatever you want to call it, you know. He doesn't want to be breathing that. And the guy's really smart. He's like a software engineer or something like that. So, you know, he's no stupid guy. And if you look at his house, it's pristine clean. I mean, it's super clean in there. It smells good. You can tell they care about their stuff, and he wants this situation taken care of. So all I can do is give him options and then leave the ball in his court and let him make that decision, you know. I will suggest to him, since we were talking, to run a new 12 off that bonus room so that we have increased capacity to bring that air that we're dumping in there back to the system. I'm going to give him an option for keeping that 14 by 14 in place. It's not as good of an option as enlarging that return to a 14 by 20, which would slow the velocity down going through that return. But we'll see what he approves, you know. And then he doesn't want to go into the custom transition because it's going to add a lot in labor for me to build that thing up in the attic. So he just wants me to take it into the side of the unit, into the side of the return plenum at the top. So we'll have to just duck under that duct when I'm going into that unit. We can still pull the blower out of there. We could pull the coil and get it out of that access. But, you know, it's going to be right there. You know, when you come in, you have to duck under it to get to the service side of the actual air handler. But that's the cheaper option, and to him it made more sense. So that's what I'm going to quote him on. You know, and then I also told him, you got to get somebody in here that's going to do a good job at remediating this stuff that's in your ductwork. I don't think those people went into his ductwork at all. I think what they did is just sprayed through it, supposedly sealing it with the stuff they used, and I don't think they actually cleaned it. You know, that's just, there was only one cut mark in the whole trunk line and return that I saw, and it was in the back of the return plenum, and it was an access hole about this big, maybe 6 inches. So I don't think they went into anywhere into that supply trunk. It's all metal and it's insulated on the outside. There was no fresh tapes anywhere in that supply plenum or supply trunk line going anywhere in that attic. So nowhere in there did they cut access points and scrub that and clean it. I have no idea how they cleaned it. You know, I'm not a duct cleaner and I'm not a mold specialist. It's not something that I do. Leave that up to professionals, but I trust my buddy that I recommended for the job. He took care of my place, he took care of my parents, he's taken care of my grandparents, he's taken care of multiple friends and family members, and even my customers. And he does a really thorough job. But he hacks that stuff up as far as cutting into the ductwork everywhere, because you have to have access through the whole duct line, or you can't scrub it with the brushes, you can't seal it properly, you can't remediate the stuff, you can't vacuum the stuff out as you're scrubbing. So he does a very thorough job, but he charges accordingly. You know, if you're doing jobs for the hospitals, for Eastman, all these big places, you're doing it the right way. He even did a job for the college, you know. So jobs he's done for, I think, ETSU and Northeast State. So it's you know, you got to do it right, you got to do it thorough, because if you don't get it all out, it's just going to keep coming back. So the other thing I don't like is those train plastic blower housings. That's just a poor design. I understand why they did it. It's lighter weight and it's cheaper to make a plastic mold versus metal, but they're notorious for collecting growth on them and having those issues, and I just don't like seeing them in an air handler. But it is what it is. I'm not a engineer for Ingersoll Rand, but you know, it's unfortunate. Those plastic wheels always seem to collect growth on them, even if airflow is really good. So I don't know. I personally would never use an air handler with a plastic blower housing. Well, anyways, it's getting dark out here. I think I covered everything. Hopefully I can piecemeal this together and make sense out of my thought process here on my thoughts on, you know, trying to save the customer money, where his money would be better spent. I believe his money first and foremost should be spent on proper remediation of the ductwork, and then also, if he wants to do some changes, we could look at replacing the heat kit, and we could look at adding a return in the bonus room so that we're able to recover at least what we're putting out in that area. And then as far as comfort, look at thermal breaking the bonus room floor in the garage ceiling. And then also the addition of possibly a room sensor up there, if he feels like, you know, he still wants that to where it's more accurate temperature as his main floor. You know, when you're heating and cooling two different floors with the same unit, it's never going to be upstairs as cool as it is going to be downstairs. You're always going to feel that difference. About 4 degrees, you're going to feel it, and that's typically what it's always going to be. Now, if you thermal break that floor, that will help. But will it help enough that you don't notice it? I don't know. You know, typically, if you have a bonus room, you really should have a separate HVAC, or you should have a zone system that's either an inverter or two-stage system, and something that's capable of reverse staging on the thermostat to where you can reverse stage. So you can call for 2 stages when you need it, and you can reverse stage back to 1 stage when you don't need it. Anyways, I could keep going about this. I want to say thanks for watching. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this video. How about you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment in the comments section. Let me know if you agree with what I'm saying or what you might think of doing differently. Nice open discussion here. Everybody be nice. We don't need to be douchebags on here. But anyways, I want to say thanks for watching. You guys stay safe out there. Get home safe to your family. That's the most important thing you can do. Get home safe to your family. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you later.